The storm had already swallowed half the sky when he carried his sleeping daughter up the stone steps of the house that wasn't his. His shirt clung to his skin, his breath uneven, his heart pounding with the weight of a day that had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. Behind him, the city lights flickered through the rain like dying fireflies. Ahead of him, the warm glow leaking through the tall windows of his boss's home felt almost unreal, a softness he wasn't sure he deserved. And as the door opened, as she stepped forward with a silent understanding in her eyes, he realized she could see the truth he had tried so hard to hide. The exhaustion, the fear, the loneliness, and above all, the look that meant he'd finally reached a breaking point he couldn't pretend away anymore. If you believe every story hides a lesson, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Humanity Stories. Inside, her house felt like another world. Soft amber lights, a gentle fireplace crackling in the corner, the faint scent of jasmine tea drifting through the hall, everything warm enough to make his chest ache. She watched him carefully as he placed his daughter on the couch, brushing a strand of wet hair from the little girl's forehead as if she were something fragile, borrowed, too precious to touch without permission. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to mirror the one inside him. His job was hanging by a thread, daycare had called him unreliable, and the landlord's final notice still echoed in his pocket. But here, in this quiet room where everything felt steady, he realized how deeply he had forgotten what safety felt like. She draped a blanket over the child and turned toward him, and that was the moment he felt something shift in the air. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It wasn't desire, not fully. It was recognition, like she had finally seen the truth in his eyes, the truth he'd always been too proud to admit. She didn't ask what happened, didn't pry, didn't offer shallow sympathy. Instead, she offered something far more dangerous, kindness. And kindness, when you're not used to receiving it, can break you open in ways you never expect. As he sat at her kitchen table, her home humming softly around him, he slowly told her what had happened, how his babysitter quit, how he'd been late 5 times this month, how he'd been warned today would be the last strike. How he had nowhere else to go when the storm hit and the power in his building died. His voice shook only once, but she caught it instantly. She set a cup of warm tea in front of him and stood close enough that he could feel her presence like a quiet shelter. And in that fragile silence, he realized something that scared him more than losing his job. She understood him. She saw him. And she wasn't looking away. Later that night, after his daughter had been tucked into the guest room, he stepped onto the balcony to breathe. The storm was fading, the city washed clean in silver light. He leaned on the railing, letting the cool air hit his face, trying to steady himself. He wasn't the kind of man who needed help, or at least that's what he'd told himself for years. But tonight, standing in a house filled with warmth he hadn't felt in a long time, he understood that strength wasn't the absence of struggle. It was surviving long enough for someone to finally notice. She joined him outside, her footsteps soft, her expression unreadable. But her eyes said everything. She knew what that look in his meant. She knew he wasn't asking for anything. He wasn't crossing a line. He wasn't broken or desperate. He was just tired. Tired of carrying the world alone. And for reasons she didn't say aloud, she didn't want him to carry it alone anymore. He exhaled, and the heaviness poured out of him like rain finally leaving the clouds. She placed a gentle hand over his, not pulling him closer, not pushing him away, just letting him know he wasn't invisible anymore. And in that moment, he understood a truth he never expected to find in his boss's house during a storm he had never planned for. Sometimes, life doesn't rescue you with miracles. Sometimes, it rescues you with people. If this story touched you even a little, don't forget to engage. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. And as the night softened and hope crept quietly back into him, he turned toward her with one final thought settling in his chest like a slow, aching sunrise. Before the story ends, tell me in the comments, what did this moment make you feel? Because he knew, and she knew, that this night, this storm, this unexpected shelter, had changed something neither of them were ready to name. But both of them felt it. And sometimes, that's where the real story begins.